After a New York State task force unveiled its report to impose a charge on drivers in Manhattan's most congested neighborhoods, one main line of attack came from lawmakers and others who say that it penalizes drivers who live far from subway and bus stops and already pay tolls that help finance a public transit system they rarely use. But on Tuesday, a transportation research group is planning to release a report that seeks to challenge the weight of that argument. Using census data, the study by the Tri-State Transportation Campaign, which promotes a decreased reliance on vehicles, analyzed commuting patterns in every state senate and assembly district in the region covered by the Metropolitan Transportation Authority, which runs the city's subway and bus systems. The study showed that not one district has more than single-digit percentages of commuters driving into the zones where they would be charged a fee, and in most places the figure is less than 4%. In addition, the report aims to rebut claims that the fees would unfairly burden New Yorkers of lesser means. In terms of income, the report found, New Yorkers who live within the city's borders and who drive earn more than public transit riders. That is not true in many suburbs, where commuters who ride railroads earn more than the same area's drivers. The pricing plan proposed by the task force, which was appointed by Gov. Andrew M. Cuomo, is aimed at easing the congestion on Manhattan's gridlocked streets, while also providing another source of funding for the failing subway system. Drivers who enter a zone that stretches from 60th Street South to the Battery could be charged $11.52 during peak commuting hours, while trucks would have to pay $25.34. Passengers using ride-hailing apps like Uber and Lyft, which have contributed significantly to the traffic problems, could face a $2 to $5 per ride surcharge. David I. Weprin, a Democratic assemblyman who represents parts of Queens and has been a vocal critic of congestion pricing, took issue with the report's findings. In his district, according to the analysis, while nearly 50% of commuters drive, only 4.2% enter the congestion zone. But the analysis, Mr. Weprin said, may not paint the whole picture. Some of his constituents do not commute every day, but they often tell him they drive to Manhattan regularly for errands, such as doctor's appointments. And while he did not dispute the report's findings that drivers have higher median incomes than public transit riders, he pointed out that drivers also have to bear other expenses, like gas and parking. I look at it as an additional tax on people who drive into Manhattan, often not wealthy people, but middle-class people, Mr. Weprin said. It is unfair to have this additional tax on residents from Queens and Brooklyn in particular, and those who are not accessible to public transport, or who would have a 2-hour commute via public transportation. When it comes to serving the disabled, Mr. Weprin said the city's subway stops are among the least accessible of any major American city. Disabled people who cannot access many subway stations and are compelled to drive, he said, would be unfairly burdened by a congestion fee. Those concerns may be legitimate, but the need for a congestion pricing plan is more pressing, said Nick Cifuentes, the executive director of the Tri-State Transportation Campaign. We can't legislate for the handful of people who may need to drive into Manhattan for a doctor's appointment, every once in a while, and leave the 6 million New Yorkers taking the train every day in the lurch to arrive at its conclusions. Analysts working for the group used data from the most recently available American Community Survey, which details demographic variables as granular as mode of transportation by race and by income from 2011 to 2015. To decipher whether those New Yorkers commuted into the proposed congestion zone, the group sorted data from the previous 5-year census, which recorded where people drive to, and then correlated it to Assembly and Senate district maps. The commuting data from the 2011 to 2015 survey has not been released. The districts with the highest number of commuters who drive into the proposed congestion zone, the report found, are in Manhattan, where people take a mix of personal cars and taxis, both of which would be subject to a congestion charge. For example, the highest percentage came from the 73rd Assembly District on the Upper East Side, where 9.2% of those entering the congestion zone rode in private vehicles. Despite the report's conclusions, the fate of any congestion pricing plan, which would have to be approved by the legislature, will likely depend on addressing the concerns of Mr. Weprin and other lawmakers who represent districts outside Manhattan. After the congestion pricing plan was released, Mr. Weprin convened a news conference in Manhattan where he was flanked by many lawmakers from the other boroughs. If there were so few people driving in, I don't think it would produce anything near the revenue that they're claiming it's producing, Mr. Weprin said, pointing out the high volume of traffic that spills across the M.T.A controlled bridges and tunnels each rush hour. There are a lot of people moving over them into Manhattan, he said. Where are the people coming from?